Can I ask from the audience, how many of you are multilingual and are raising multilingual families?
Right.
So we have several people who are in that situation. So, what does the audience think? Do people get confused? I see many people saying no. So the evidence is that people don't really get confused. Children from very young on, they can figure out which person speaks what language, and they tune in, and if one person speaks English, they will respond in English. If another person speaks Italian, they will speak to that person in Italian. So there is no issue of confusion between two languages.
Okay. So there may be some pressure on parents perhaps to think that they're doing their children a service to switch to English or whatever the community language is, to give them a leg up, so to speak, when they start school. But actually the evidence suggests that maintaining home language is good for oral language, spoken language comprehension and production in the home language, and that will have positive impact on the community language as well. The other thing is obviously, clearly language is obviously a very important part of your cultural identity and cultural transmission, so that is what's important.
So what is the evidence? If children can read and write in the mother tongue, is it going to be easier for them to read and write in English? The evidence says that this is true, especially if the mother tongue has a simpler orthography than English. So if your mother tongue is Italian or Spanish or another language where the letters correspond to sounds very clearly, then if they learn that kind of system and then they start learning English, that helps them because they've learned one simple orthography and then they can transfer that skill from that language into English. So if you're bilingual, you may be smarter. Is that true?
Well, obviously, yeah. So, well, it's controversial, okay? So, there is a big body of research, and I'd say it's really picked up in the last sort of 15, 20 years. Perhaps bilinguals are better at perspective taking. So again, when you have to switch point of view, and that is perhaps, again, because as bilinguals we're constantly switching between one code and the other, so that may be one reason. Some studies have not found a bilingual advantage, okay? So some studies have found that bilinguals are no better than monolinguals. Reassuringly, there are no studies that have found that bilinguals are disadvantaged compared to monolinguals when it comes to these tasks. The interesting thing, as I said, originally the question was quite maybe naively put, I'd say, but over the last few years, people have really refined this concept, and perhaps, some bilinguals, maybe those that use two languages on a daily basis, maybe those that code switch a lot, maybe those that learn two languages in childhood as opposed to later in life. Maybe those are the people that are going to find these bilingual advantages, which has proved quite elusive so far. So when you hear about bilinguals being smarter, maybe yes, maybe no. So I think, the jury's still out there, but this is what is going to keep us in business for the next few years. So watch this space. Okay, so this is again another one of these things that you hear a lot. Are children better language learners than adults? And we often get this impression. So is that true?
And that depends. It depends whether we're looking at children who are learning a language in an environment where the language is spoken. So if we have children who are growing up in the UK learning English and another language, then they're better. But if we're looking at children who are learning a language as a foreign language in another country without being immersed in the language and the culture, then it is quite controversial. So if a child is born in the UK, is growing up bilingual or multilingual, the language skills in both languages are going to be better than if we have an adult who moves to the UK at a later stage, because the children are still developing. They are developing the brain, they're developing the skills, and so they have the flexibility to be able to develop language and learn language much faster than adults. So we can't expect that within a couple of months, because it is a child, they will be able to develop all the language skills. So it is going to take several months, it's going to take several years to become like a monolingual child. So we shouldn't really expect that because they're children, they will develop extremely quickly. So that's quite important.
I work in a school where there are lots of children who speak many different languages at home. How appropriate is it to bring the home language, or to what extent should we bring the home language into the classroom, especially where there are lots and lots of different home languages within the same classroom?
Well, I think very appropriate. To the extent of, obviously clearly sort of English is the medium of instruction, but giving children a sense that their home language, whatever it might be, is valuable, so valuable that you actually use it in school, maybe if it's just to say good morning and how are you or my name is or whatever it is. I think it gives children a great sense of pride in their own linguistic heritage, and I think it's a really very positive message that, I know a lot of schools are doing already sort of to encourage an inclusive and multicultural environment in which you get the children to use it. Even like I said, if it's something that can be used with meaning, it's going to be very, very relevant for them. Of course, I'm not suggesting they should have a literacy program in, 25 different languages, obviously. But even if it's just like, teaching other children to write their name in a different script, for example. So I think it's a really very positive and valuable message.
How do you define bilingualism? Because it is, do you understand that it is only understanding the language, it is speaking the language, it is ability to make conversation in this language?
I think bilingualism is whatever you want it to be, in a sense. Okay, so some people, when asked, are you bilingual, they think they can answer yes, only if you're like super competent and equally proficient. There is this myth of the perfectly balanced bilingual who can converse, just as proficiently in one language as in the other, writing both, and so on and so forth. When we all know, I think all of us who are bilingual to some extent, we have very different levels of proficiency in reading and writing, and paradoxically, over the course of our lives, a language that wasn't our first language might take over. So, for example, my first language is Italian, but now I would have great difficulties at writing an academic paper in Italian because I've never done it. So all my training has been in English. So my second language, I'm more proficient in my second language in this niche kind of thing. So I think bilingualism is an extremely fluid concept. And, as long as the languages that you use are functionally useful to you in your life and in your relationships, you're a bilingual, really. So I'd say.